All right, welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid
Crazy
Podcast.
Stupid Podcast. I'm
I'm
trying
Adrian.
out a little jingle for us.
Oh, is that what that was? I thought you were just having a Jessica Day moment right there.
I mean, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. So we are in a bit of a phase here, no pun intended, where we're going back and we're watching some of our favorite things, and we're starting this off with Civil War, Captain America: Civil War. We just got finished watching. Esther, what are your thoughts?
I mean, like you were just saying, it does age very well. Still, I have rewatched that movie like a few times
Oh
since
yeah,
since that first time I
my
saw it.
fourth or fifth time for me.
But I do tend to rewatch Winter Soldier more than I rewatch Civil War, so it's been a little bit.
Understandable.
And yeah, because I've like all of the best things in Civil War are like they're even more so in Winter Soldier.
I agree.
But oh, okay, sorry. Um, but yes, I would say it aged very well. This time, I was really struck by like how good the storytelling was because when you think about it, like I can just imagine the conversations that they were having where they were like, we have to remind people about what happened to Tony's parents without having it be so prevalent on their minds that they guess the plot twist before we get there.
Yeah.
Having that little augmented reality memory scene at the beginning just to like put it in our minds that when his parents' death comes back at the end, it's not just like out of nowhere. Like they just mentioned it just so that it's like there, right, in the back of our heads, but not present enough that while we're watching the film, we're like piecing things together. That's very good storytelling right there.
They also don't mention it by itself.
Right.
When they mention Tony's parents, Pepper is also there, right? He sees her name on the prompt, and then you realize, oh, they're not together anymore. That's what I take away from that scene. I'm not always thinking about that because he's talked about his parents before. So them reminding us, and then when you add in the fact that they broke up, it takes away from why was that important? Oh wait, Pepper. Now I'm thinking that's just more direct.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And it's also like the prevalence of that scene or why that scene was in the movie becomes clear when he sees Alfre Woodard's in the hallway, the
Right.
mother. And then you're like, oh, that's why we're here. Which
Yeah.
I do have to say, casting Alfre Woodard for that little itty
It's a
bitty
little
part
weird.
is absolutely nuts.
Also,
I mean, she delivered like she always does, but wow.
also, he brings up his parents again in relation to the Accords when he brings in FDR's pens. So immediately, I'm again not thinking about the parents. I'm thinking about, oh shoot, yeah, Cap was alive when FDR was there, and Tony Stark's dad has a set of pens. Really, I'm not thinking about they're
Yeah.
bringing up his passed away father again. I'm not thinking about that.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's a really
everything
good
made
point.
sense. And then when it comes back at the end, it's like, oh, because if they had not mentioned his parents at all in the film or what happened to them, the plot twist wouldn't have made as much sense. I don't think it would have felt a little out of nowhere. But because they were sort of bringing that back in and weaving it into the story the whole time,
Yeah.
just everything felt very seamless when it all comes together at the end. So, I mean, props to them. I will say, like, obviously, great directors, great storytellers. I do think that what they were trying to have happen with Cap and what's her face? Sharon. I'm like, that's not their strong suit. That they do a good job. I think they do a good job because I remember one of our commenters when we did that video about Ryan Coogler. One of the commenters said that like they do really good action, but sometimes the character work suffers in their films for the Russo brothers.
Okay.
And I do think they have some good like character building in this film, obviously. And I think they do a good job with showing you the relationships between the characters that already exist, right? Like Natasha and Steve, and just, all the close friendships, Rhodey and Stark. But trying to throw that little romantic thing in there, that
With
was
Sharon.
just very odd and jarring, and it was not well done.
Because it's almost like what is her reasoning for wanting to help Steve so much?
Yeah. I thought her reasoning was loyalty to my aunt, to Peggy.
That would have been enough
That's
for me.
enough for me. Honestly, it was very odd. The thing is, listen, Russo Brothers, I'm sorry. I don't know what you guys have done in the past. I don't know if you've ever done romance before, but you have to take time with it. You can't just throw it in there
But
as a side piece.
there were some
thing.
hints in Winter Soldier.
I don't remember. Maybe if
Yeah.
I'd watched Winter Soldier.
Like
man.
if we did it back to back.
Yeah. But still, it was just like the kiss was like, huh?
I think it felt I was uncomfortable not because of it feeling rushed. I mean, you are more of an expert on rom-coms than I am, but I feel it was just more so because I know where Cap's story ends up. It was just like,
It's like
this is weird.
It's not going anywhere.
You're
because it's
just
like
staying
they
in the
dropped
family, bro. That's just kind of weird,
it's
man.
giving The Graduate because they just dropped it after that. That's true.
You know,
I date every generation in this family.
you know what? I mean, you brought up character moments. Here are a few praises that I do want to give with the Russo brothers. I think Civil War established why Cap chose Sam as the next Captain America. There were a lot of moments when I'm watching that film where when Cap doesn't know what to do, he literally just says, Sam, what's the plan? I noticed that a
didn't catch
few times
that.
in the first few fight scenes when they go to the infectious disease center. Cap looks to Sam and essentially asks, like, all right, what's the body count of how many armed soldiers are there? And it can't. Sam is updating him on how many people. Then Cap sees a truck. He goes to Sam and tells Sam to track that truck that's moving through the city. Then there are a few moments later on with I'm trying to remember. There was a few that I probably should have wrote them down, but there was one that had to do with Wanda, where it was Sam that came in and helped her out, and then there was another moment later on at the airport, when Cap was like, "We need something to help us all escape." And then Sam was like, no, we're
You
not
two
all
are-
going to make it
yeah.
out of here. You and Bucky just have to go. Then what does Cap say again? Okay, Sam, what's the plan? And Sam comes up with the reason that we need a diversion. That had happened multiple times in that movie where I was like, Cap doesn't trust anyone else in these high intense moments except for Sam.
Yeah.
Except for him. And so people keep trying to bring up, oh, it should have been Bucky. And I've got a couple of things to say
I
about
don't
that.
think Bucky would have done it.
One, I don't know if Bucky would have wanted to, but the optics would have been horrible. You're saying that you would have wanted a former Nazi soldier picked over a black U.S. veteran?
Don't do Bucky like that.
Okay, listen, I know Bucky, he was being controlled. I understand that, but he did work for Hydra.
Yeah, I think the trust is just gone with him, and people need to trust Cap, whoever holds the shield.
Yeah.
And I don't. People just don't trust Bucky. It's not his fault.
Yeah,
but
and I'm going to preface, I'm not blaming Bucky.
Yeah,
which
no.
we'll get to that later on, but the optics would have looked horrible for
Yeah.
Cap to be like, I'm going to pick someone that, yes, he was being controlled, but he did work for a Nazi agency. Like, that just would have been horrible.
Like, not even optics within our world as viewers, but within their
In
world,
their world,
it would have
yeah.
been. And not even just optics. I think it actually just functionally would not have worked.
No.
Simply because people do not trust Bucky.
Right. I mean, and you get a little bit of that in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And he didn't even have this thing out of his head yet, so it
Yeah.
wouldn't have worked. But
Also, the dynamic between Falcon and Bucky that exists in the show, I don't think I realized that they sort of set the groundworks for that in this movie.
Yeah.
I forgot that
Can you
until
move
I
your
was
seat up?
watching it. I was like, oh, like this has been the vibe with you guys.
yeah. Yeah, it's like I don't even know what to call it. Like it's like two sons trying to compete for their dad's approval. It's like Kendall in Roman in Succession. That's literally it's just like, bro, what are y'all doing?
Oh, that's funny.
But I thought about that with Sam, where I was like, it had to be him.
Yeah.
And it's not. This was not like some kind of social justice, virtue signaling.
There
this
was nobody
woke
else.
thing. Objectively,
There was nobody else.
yeah, the Russos had already established it, where it's like it had to be Sam. It had to be him, because who else was going to do it, and who would have done it at the like he was mentored
Yeah, their
directly
values
under
align.
Cap. Right, exactly.
Yeah. I had a couple thoughts. I know there's two things that people have been talking about recently. Of course, people are always talking about the Accords and which side was right.
Wait,
And
before we get to it,
oh,
chorus, I want to keep talking about some character moments.
okay, my bad.
No, no, that's fine. Because we did get introduced to two new characters in that film.
Mm-hmm.
We get Black Panther, King T'Challa, and we get Peter Parker as Spider-Man. How do you think they handled both of those new characters?
I think they handled both of them very well. I remember when I first watched it. I mean, obviously, I was already hyped to see Black Panther be introduced and to see Chadwick and his beautiful eyes on the big screen. But like I remember when I watched, I think I saw it with my sister, and I was maybe both of them, probably both of them. We would have seen it all three together. But I remember like when Peter Parker,
college years, weren't we still at Andrews?
might have been in the summer. I don't know. I remember seeing it with them.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but I remember us talking about Peter Parker and being like, "Oh yeah, this is great! Like, oh, he's cute! Like
It's literally him.
yeah, he's just like an adorable teenager. That's literally the vibes." Also, it's wild that we didn't know Tom Holland. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
because like
he's just
he
some
was
random
literally
kid.
a random person. Like, I'd never laid eyes on him before
He
that.
had probably
film.
done some other smaller projects, but for the most part, nobody knew who he was.
Everybody's always been like in like a Law and Order episode or something. Like everybody has like those random credits, but like I had no idea who this guy was. It's kind of crazy to think that now because he's like such a prevalent part of pop culture now, especially dating Zendaya. Good on him for that.
That's a W. My boy.
But yes, I thought that his introduction was perfect. And I remember even back then loving that they were like, we're not going to retell the origin story for Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was wise. They were like, we know you've seen it enough. We know everybody knows it. We don't need it. Like, he'll be introduced through this film. You'll get a vibe. You'll get a feel for his vibe and how this actor is portraying him, which I think is really spot on and probably the best Peter Parker, I feel. Like, I think...
I don't want to go there with you, Esther. Listen, you are talking about a Tobey Maguire fanatic as Spider-Man, so
I just feel like Tom Holland taps really well into like because Peter Parker is like, from my understanding, is like, yeah, he's nerdy, but he's also very charming.
Yeah,
he does both. I feel that Tobey Maguire was it more nerdy than charming.
He didn't have the charm as
yes.
I'll give you
Andrew
that.
Garfield was more charming than nerdy.
Yeah.
And Tom Holland is a perfect balance of the two, I think.
I hear everything that you're saying.
It doesn't matter.
Nope.
It's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. That's fine. But I thought the introduction of him was very good. And of course, Chadwick Boseman, just phenomenal. I have to say, I was struck watching this film that there was a visible difference in his appearance between this movie and Black Panther. I didn't notice before. But he's like his face was a little rounder in Civil War. I just didn't notice that. Surely, I'm sure it's because of the...
not to bring the mood down, but
no,
I think that's probably
but
why.
I just, that just struck me watching. I was like, oh, like, I don't actually remember him looking like this because, like, he changed. But
they did a good job. They did a good job at letting you know what their abilities are without having to go into too much exposition. Like Tony pulls out the highlights and he's like, oh, you caught a 5,000-ton car. It's like, okay, so he has super strength. He catches Bucky's punch. Another moment.
Mm-hmm.
T'Challa, he's just shooting bullets, and he's literally, besides Cap, he's the only one that's like keeping up with Bucky. So you're getting a very clear idea of what are the strength and ability metrics here and what they can and can't do, you know? So I thought that was pretty impressive as well. But
I also think they did a good job sort of introducing their politics a little, not politics, but like their values a little bit. Yeah, like you learned a little bit about Chadwick's view of the world at the time, which changes drastically. Like his view of diplomacy, his view of like honestly, that explains a lot of why he needed to go through the change that he went through when he fought Killmonger, right? Like this viewpoint of like working with other people. I don't think he didn't seem like he was a fan at the time.
No.
So it explains a little bit of like the shift he goes through later.
Listen, man, I loved him in Black Panther, but I love him in Civil War. I think okay, so in terms of a full, fleshed out, well-rounded character, T'Challa in Black Panther is definitely better. But
fight scene.
the vengeance of this T'Challa in Civil War, oh my gosh. Listen, without Wanda being there, he could have killed Bucky a couple of times, which was just like, oof, that would have been wild. And T'Challa had some crazy one-liners in this movie when he was like, so I ask you as both warrior and king, how long will you keep your friends safe from me? I was like, woo, woo, woo. Wait a minute. This dude is too cold for me, yo. I can't deal with that, man. It was just so entertaining to watch him.
Yeah.
They introduced him very, very well.
Very well.
And there were a few moments where like this scene got cut out. But there's a scene when almost Natasha is being a little patronizing or a little condescending to T'Challa because they still think it's a third world country. And so she kind of thinks he doesn't fully understand like the politics that go behind.
Should have kept that scene in.
I know. I got a little frustrated when I first watched it. But then before he can even respond, Agent Ross comes out and like sarcastically is clapping, applauding T'Challa, and it was like he got extradition or something like that to Bucky. And so he looks at Natasha and is basically like, I do have much to learn, don't I? And then kind of walks away. Like they are establishing him at like this boss level that is just so incredible that
I love to see black people stunt on white people.
Yes, all the time. All the time.
It brings me great joy. I'm so sorry if that offends you. You're watching the wrong thing, listening to the wrong podcast.
Yeah. But I think that's all the character moments that I thought worked really well.
Let's get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're into the who was right, who was wrong. What team
I feel like
are
there's
we
two
on?
things. We have to talk about the Accords, who
Yes.
was right, who was wrong, but also the conversation right now has been about that final scene
About
with
Tony's
Iron Man
parents.
and Tony. Yeah.
So there's two things.
Yeah.
So let's start off with the Accords.
Okay.
Yeah. Who do you think was right and wrong when it comes to the Accords?
Okay. I have two viewpoints on this. If I were a person living in their universe, like just a regular civilian living
Yeah.
in that world, I'm not going to lie, I would probably be like, yeah, they need to sign the Accords.
Look how they did that airport.
Yeah, like I feel like without having all of the insight into the characters, because that's the thing, like as a viewer, we know them, we know their values, we know who they are as people. As just a person in that world, you're not seeing all of this background.
No,
all you
you
see
don't
is
have that
what they
insight.
do when they go out and fight people.
Right.
And so I could understand feeling unsafe and wanting there to be some sort of structure to keep them in check.
Primarily because of, I would say, Tony and Hulk. Because Banner was already a bit of a short fuse. You don't really know what's going
Yeah.
to set him off. But Tony, particularly with Age of Ultron, all of that's his fault.
All of that is his fault.
All of that is his
Yeah.
fault. And I think he's aware of that too, which is just like, I can't trust myself with this science. I think then he sees the consequences of it, like on a personal level with the son that passed away in Sokovia, who was there, just to do some good. I think that's definitely fueling him.
Yeah. I do think some of the other examples that they gave, I'm like, listen, the aliens were going to come to New York.
Regardless.
There was going to be destruction.
Yeah. You can't put that all on them. It's
yeah.
like,
But yes, those examples, like I could understand that. However, as a viewer watching and knowing the characters, this is the thing that I think is very ironic about this entire situation. The government's like, we got to get these people under control. We got to da-da-da-da-da-da. The government is responsible for the existence of Bucky, for the existence of Wanda, for the existence of Steve. Like this was y'all. Like, you guys are the ones who created these beings, these ultra powerful beings.
It was Hydra working through the government for all of Winter Soldier and years prior to that.
So I found it very interesting when you look at like how they, what side everybody ended on.
Mm-hmm.
The people who ended up not signing the Accords are the people who have already been tools of some sort of government,
Yeah.
U.S. or otherwise. They have already experienced what it could look like and mean for them if they do not have agency, because that's exactly what happened with Wanda. That's what happened to Steve. That's what happened to Bucky. And even Natasha, the way that she wasn't fully on one side or the other, when you see Black Widow, you see that she also was at one point a tool for some sort of government structure where she did not have agency, could not make her own choices. And same thing with Bart, Clint, all of them. So also, I think it's very interesting that they are the ones that were like, no, we cannot fully align ourselves with this because we know how it could look. The people on the flip side are people who have worked for the government.
Yeah, but here's what I will say, though. More context with Steve, we learned in Falcon and the Winter Soldier that he knew about Isaiah Bradley. And so now when you add in more context of like, it isn't just about us as super soldiers and us as Avengers, it's people that the government has experimented on that like even people don't even know about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And having that context makes it even harder for me to like be fully on Tony's side.
They know what it looks like versus people like Tony, people like Rhodey. Like they have literally worked for the government. Like they're like the way that these two sides and groups of people have interacted with the governmental power structures is completely different and coming from completely different angles. And that makes a lot of sense why they went the ways that they went. But I do think that Tony made a very good point that I think kind of ends the conversation when he was saying like all this has to shift the blame. Having people in charge of the Avengers is not going to stop destruction. It's not even the right, you're not even addressing the right problem.
Yeah.
Because it's not like this is going to stop them from fighting people. They're still going to go and fight people, and there's probably still going to be lots of destruction when they do it. They just won't choose when they go. So all it does is say, well, now the Avengers are just following orders, so it's not their fault. It's whoever sent them there. But the problem still exists. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I think what makes this more difficult even for me as I'm watching, because I can see what Steve is saying is in terms of what if we need to be somewhere and they don't allow it? And he ends his argument by saying the safest hands are still our own. And he mentions it's run by people with agendas and agendas change. But I'm over here watching like, Steve, look around the room. All of you all have your own personal individual agendas as well. I think we lucked out in their world having these super enhanced individuals that had a positive worldview, an empathetic worldview. But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think it's too far-fetched to think of a scenario where what about an enhanced individual who makes a wrong decision? Like, there has to be something there in place where if somebody ends up making a bad choice, what happens? Like with Tony, and Steve says, Tony, you chose to do that in terms of shutting down his machines. But what if he didn't? What if he didn't? You know what I mean? Like, what if at one point in a different universe, Tony chooses not to do that? What then, Steve? Like, that's too much. It almost feels like too much agency that you're placing on these enhanced individuals, where all it takes is one bad day for them to do something, and there's no one to put them in check.
I feel like they are each other's check.
Like they balance each other well.
Yeah, or like even if it's not about balance, it's like, because like sure, like I mean in this scenario, yes, like we did get lucky and they do balance each other out. But in a scenario where you have somebody who does the wrong thing or doesn't balance each other out, they are the check on that person. Like that's how it. I feel like I could see that being his thought process of like when he says the best hands are our own, not that we are all perfect and infallible, but that as a group we can manage our own, essentially.
It also doesn't help that Fury's not around.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that too. Like he was just such a problem solver, and when he's not there, it's like they have to make all these difficult decisions on their own.
And
like,
there's no clear person in charge. It's kind of
right,
like Cap or Tony. It's
right,
like,
right.
yeah.
And I think Rhodey's good at the government military agency sort of navigating, but he doesn't have the clout that I think Fury does. You know what I mean? I think Fury's experience, what he's been able to put together, being essentially the origin of the Avengers, it hurts when he's not there.
Yeah, I think that's a big
Yeah.
big part of why this all fell apart the way it did.
Yeah, that the Accords one is tough. That one's tough. I think with T'Challa and his father, they're like, we need some sovereignty on our borders because, I mean, look what y'all did to this entire continent. Like, historically speaking, I can see a scenario where they're like,
I mean,
we
at
don't
the
want
same
enhanced
time, though,
individuals.
it's kind of rich. Like, love Wakandans. Love them. They're my favorite.
Yeah.
But it is sort of rich for them to be like, you guys need to sign these accords that somebody's responsible for you. Meanwhile, they just have a whole secret. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've got like a whole secret, first of all, a whole secret super soldier that the world didn't know about till just now. That guy's not signing the accords. T'Challa's not signing shit.
No, he was. T'Challa was on board.
I didn't think T'Challa was signing anything.
No, he was on board.
I thought he was on board with them having to sign it because T'Challa's not part of the Avengers.
Oh, I see what you mean. Black Panther.
Yeah.
So
that's
so
what I'm saying. It's like,
this is where I guess I'm confused. Is the Sokovia Accords about enhanced individuals, or is it specifically about the Avengers?
it's about the Avengers, I think, because in this world, in the comics, it's about enhanced individuals because they have mutants.
Yeah.
But in this world, the enhanced individuals are the Avengers.
This is why the Dora Milaje were able to go to, like, you know, I don't remember in Falcon Winter Soldier when they ended up fighting the new Captain America, and they were like, the Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever we want them to be. In my head, I was like, that doesn't make sense. But then now that you mention it, yeah, they're not a part of the Accords. So, like, what legal ramifications could the UN actually place on them for going to another country?
I mean, they're essentially they function the same way as like CIA secret agents do. Like, you
That's
just
true.
like you send people,
Yeah,
you know. But I don't like T'Challa is not signing anything. You know what I'm saying? Like,
he's not registering himself.
right. So it's like it's a little rich for you guys to be like, yeah, you guys need to sign.
It's tough because Tony saw what they were doing with Wanda, and I'm like, dude, why was that not enough? You know what I mean? Like, they had not just being locked in the Avengers room, but even later on, they've got her in a straitjacket. She's in padded walls. Like, bro, come on.
Yeah, I mean, like, logically from their standpoint, it's like, honestly, what else can we do to prevent her from being able to escape?
What happened earlier in August, that wasn't her fault. That was Steve's. He got distracted.
Yeah, I also am just like, the bomb was gonna go off.
Right.
Like, wouldn't it have been worse if she had, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he had just blown the thing up and she hadn't circled her powers around the explosion.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it actually have been worse than what ended up happening? I'm just saying.
Yeah. This was great. This because you're seeing it from both perspectives with the Accords. I don't know if I have an answer on, like, when I first walked out of the theater last time, I was like, I'm fully on board on Team Cap, on everything. Now I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking of, like,
That's a video. I had the opposite switch.
what if it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm watching The Boys too much because it's like, I don't know, man. A superhero can end up doing some crazy stuff.
But The Boys is an example where they essentially do have an Accords-like agreement. Those superheroes are run by an entity.
But Homelander ends up, when he realizes that he doesn't need to listen to this structure, he ends up choosing to do whatever he wants. Like, that is just as scary as a government deciding you what to do. You know what I mean?
Yes. But I think that just sort of proves that the Accords it's like a nothing sandwich. Because it's like,
what do we do?
It's like, seriously, like, what can happen? Like, you can't really stop people that are superhuman.
I mean, you saw it when Zemo triggered Bucky. That little cage thing didn't really stop him. He was able to get out whenever he wanted to.
Yeah, but also this isn't the agreement isn't like we're gonna keep you imprisoned until we need to use you. They're still free, right? So, like, at any point, Iron Man signed it, right? But if at any point Iron Man was like, I think I need to do my own thing, what are they gonna do? They can't do anything. They can't stop him.
No, they would probably send Rhodey. They did that in Iron Man 2, and Rhodey beat him in that fight. Granted, circumstances were different. He was intoxicated. He wasn't thinking straight, but
I mean, okay, but like,
they
but you
probably
see what I'm trying to
simulated.
say is like, you like, even with a paper that's signed, you're still banking on the goodwill and the loyalty of these heroes in the same way that you're banking on their goodwill and loyalty if they don't sign it.
What's interesting though, I got a bone to pick with Rhodey, man. Bro, you a black man.
He's a little coon-like.
No, I'm not gonna go that far.
Sorry.
I'm not gonna go that far. But it is like, Rhodey, you know the history of what structural racism looks like and the role government plays in that. How you gonna be fully on board, bro? Like no nuance. I'm like, damn, dog. Like
In his
talking at
defense-
Sam like Sam wasn't making sense.
In his defense, Rhodey's big thing was 117 countries signed it. It's
Yeah.
the United Nations. So it's not technically the U.S. government. However, we all know how world politics play out.
Yeah.
And we know that the American government has huge sway over the rest of the world and what happens in other countries and what decisions are made.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I guess I could see what you're saying, because that's what I initially said too, was I was like, I mean, it's not like it's one government, it's the United Nations. And generally I tend to trust them as an entity. I don't know. They seem fairly trustworthy to me, the United Nations.
There's politics in there as well.
Of course there are, but I think it's one of those things where there's so many politics. It's like ideally things would like balance out.
That's fair.
But in reality, there's just larger countries with more money, countries with more that just are better, that are more respected around the world,
Yeah.
have a lot of say over what happens and how things go. So even that argument doesn't really stand. I think after rewatching it now, I think I am fully on the side of Captain America, just because I think
I want to take this moment to dwell because we spent
we
hours.
spent a long time arguing about this. But I think, like, for a few reasons. A, I don't think the Sokovia Accords do even what they are trying to do. I don't think they accomplish it. Number one. Two, I think that it could go really badly based on what we have seen. And I think that's why all the people who didn't sign chose not to sign, because they have all been victims of that.
Yeah.
And three, I think that point that Kat made about all it does is shift the blame is correct. I think all it does is that when bad things do happen, because they will still happen, it just won't be the Avengers' fault. It'll be somebody else. It'll be whoever sent them there. But it doesn't stop anything. I don't think.
It feels like
It's like it feels like a very empty. I think it would make people feel better.
yeah.
I think that's all
it's
does.
it's theatrics.
Yeah.
It's theatrics in politics,
Yeah.
essentially. All right. Well, let's switch over to the more personal one. Who was right? Who was wrong? So when it comes to revealing what happens to Tony's parents, who do you think was right? Who do you think was wrong when it comes to Tony's parents?
I think Tony has a lot of nerve, and I've been saying this when people say this online. Here's my thing with Tony, okay? Tony, you are a person who has been responsible for thousands of people's deaths.
Wanda's parents.
Wanda's parents, for one, and thousands of other parents, thousands of other children and families, right? Like
Ultron.
Ultron, but also before all of this, you made war weapons. That's how your family built up their wealth. And you made those decisions in your right mind with complete agency. But because of your family's name, because of their legacy, and because of your wealth, you were given the opportunity to have a second chance and to completely change, to essentially completely save your own reputation.
Yeah.
You were given the chance to choose to do something different. And since then, that's what you have been attempting to do, right? Now look at Bucky. Bucky is a person whose agency was robbed from him, who did not have agency or choice over the things that he did. And you are looking at him and saying he does not deserve a chance to turn his own life around, to make different choices for himself. If it was any other character in the MCU, I might be able to say like I understand, because it's like, even knowing logically and theoretically that Bucky was not the one like in control of his own decisions, like, like obviously like your rage, your emotion, the trauma of it, would overcome your logic in that scenario, and I could understand it.
Yeah.
But it's just the history of Tony's character to me that just makes it like, are you serious? Because he's no worse than who you were a few years ago. In fact, you are probably worse because you were making these decisions in your right mind on your own by yourself.
Yeah, I think what always frustrates me about this conversation is when people say, like, it's like I see people oversimplify that fight scene where they say, like, remember when Bucky killed Tony's parents and then him and Steve beat him up for it? And I'm like,
That's not
that's not what happened. Stop it. Like, you so frustrated. You fully understand that Bucky is also a victim. He did not have control over what he was doing. And how you all just conveniently leave that point out when you talk about Civil War is so funny to me. It's so funny to me because
I mean, I think
it's
people are
so
doing it to be
crucial.
funny.
Yeah, but it's just
like,
but I mean,
yeah.
even the clip where we saw with that one, I don't know what her username is, but when she was like, she said, Bucky and Cap were dead wrong for this. Dead wrong for this? What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean?
No.
Like Steve is trying to like talk reason to him. It wasn't him. He didn't have control. And I also want to note when Steve says, I didn't know it was him, I think he meant he knew the Winter Soldier played a role.
But at the time, he didn't know who the Winter Soldier was until.
Right.
I mean, but when
he did know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think under the right circumstances, I do think Steve should have told Tony. Everyone deserves to have the right to know what happens to their loved ones in the most honest way, and as painful as it might be. But in this situation, bro, the real problem is like these governments that you want to sign these papers to.
That's exactly.
Your parents don't die if there isn't government
Somebody ordering
exactly.
Them to do it.
If there's no government controlling enhanced super soldiers, your parents would still be alive, Tony.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. And your dad played a role in creating the serum.
Yep.
So I don't know. Wait.
It's a lot of people, like, sadly and tragically, like, reaping the consequences of their own actions and their own choices. A lot of people, a lot of structures and systems, and the people involved in them who created all of this, who are to blame for what has happened, and they're upset that now it's beyond their control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have empathy for that.
Zemo's right. He talks about this all the time. When this is what happens when you have this, like, he uses that term like super soldier supremacy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, now that this one has it, now everyone wants it. Mm-hmm. And in the wrong hands, that can do a lot of damage.
Yep.
A lot of damage. Yeah. I think when it comes to the parents, I think I'm on Roger's side with the caveat that he should have told him when stakes weren't so high.
Yes. Like, perhaps this conversation could have maybe gone differently. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not 100% confident that even in another scenario, if Cap had told him, that Stark wouldn't have been like, the next time I get a chance, I'm going out. I don't know, honestly.
Well, what I think there was some time in between Winter Soldier and Civil War where Cap could have mentioned it.
Yes. What I'm saying is, I don't know that Stark would have responded differently.
You think so?
I don't know.
I think part of it was that Zemo played such a well card with the theatrics of it. He built it all up, and then he just threw the video of it. Like, Tony wasn't thinking straight.
He wasn't.
You know what I'm saying? He's watching the video as opposed to hearing it from your friend. I kind of think
it could have gone
might
differently.
Made a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think Zemo is a little bit underrated as a villain. After watching this film and, like, really understanding what his end goal was, like,
He did
Bes-
destroy the Avengers.
Yes, besides Thanos, he's one of the only villains who has actually succeeded.
Like who else could you say like won? Killmonger temporarily, and I wouldn't even say that because T'Challa didn't die. You know what
No,
I mean?
yeah.
He was found by the fishmen who I thought they were supposed to be vegetarian, but we won't get into that with M'Baku. Anyways, Namor he lost. Loki he lost. All those other villains, I didn't really matter.
It's also the fact that he did all of this without any sort of brute force or strength.
He
It
has
was
no
all a
super-
mind game.
He's just a regular guy.
Yeah, it was all a mind game and all strategy. Like he was really playing the long game.
Yeah.
Like he had this all planned out. Like to the point where like as a viewer watching the movie, you don't understand what he's trying to do until the very
last
end.
moment.
You actually don't understand his motives until the very end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like first you're like he's trying to get the super soldiers to control them. Then they get there and they're all dead and it's like, huh?
Why did he do that? Yeah, I remember being so confused in the theater when I saw the bullet holes. Just like, wait, so what else? What are you gonna do? And then he reveals it. And I
Yeah.
was just like,
It's honestly masterful, and he should be included in the conversation we talk about. Like very, very good, well written villains.
yeah. I mean, Marvel doesn't have the greatest list of villains of an antagonist, but I would say he's got to be up there in top 5 if we're being honest in terms of what he was able to accomplish. Right? Obviously, there's Thanos, there's Killmonger, there's Namor. I mean, Loki. There's got to be Zemo.
Yeah,
Who else?
yeah.
You know what I mean? So, anyways, I think that covers everything. Oh, this was the last thing that I was going to say. And I was thinking about this while we were watching. I think what's missing from the MCU right now is that we need an Avengers movie. Or we need a movie where the characters are all in the same film and they're interacting with each other. Because it feels like as I'm watching this, there's something unique that happens when you're seeing all of these solo film characters interacting with each other. You're building out the world and you're making it feel more cohesive and more complete. Because I know Civil War is not labeled an Avengers movie, but it's
It
basically
feels like one.
Yeah, it's an Avengers movie. It kind of felt like Disney was like, we needed another Avengers movie because Warner Brothers is coming out with their Batman versus Superman or their Justice
They
League.
didn't need to worry about that.
No, but at the time, who knows? But anyways, those moments will help build out how fans will connect even deeper to these characters, because it's around this time where Wanda starts to feel more important and you get a sense of why Clint and Natasha are around, right? You get a deeper sense of who Cap is, the transformation he's going from this guy who's like, he's ready to sign up and go fight Nazis in the war to now he's like, I don't want a single thing to do with the government. And you've got Tony where he's dealing with his own internal conflicts and seeing the consequences of things that he has gone through, things that his dad was a part of. You've got Bucky. You've got the expansion of what Vision is. Like just a simple line of, I got distracted. I didn't think that was possible, right? You're getting a sense of, oh, there's something more to him. And you're getting an idea of like the politics of the world, how they are interacting, how they see the Avengers. Those moments are too important for, in my opinion, for Marvel to wait this long to give us one. And I know we're going to get one, obviously, with Kang, but it does kind of feel like that might be why something feels a little missing from,
Maybe.
because I'm as I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, these are some of these moments that I think about the most.
But I mean, how many years did we go in the first phase before we got an Avengers movie?
So Iron Man came out in 2008, and then the first Avengers came out in 2012.
3 years.
So
Where the first one's coming out in what, 2024? The first Avengers movie? Isn't there one next year?
no, I think it got pushed to 25.
So we're going about 5 years.
No. Endgame came out 2019. So 6 years.
And I think I'm honestly like they wouldn't be able to put everybody in it though at this point.
No, but there's some core people. The people, and this is another
Who
thing.
are the core people?
All right, see, that's my point. You need,
To establish who they are.
and not just for the sake of like a marketing tool, there needs to be a core group that we are consistently connected with, because we knew very early on it was Thor, Cap, Iron Man, right? All of the stories are centered around them. There's Iron Man with Ultron, his connection with Thanos. There's Steve when it comes to Hydra and the role that played. And there's Thor with the Tesseract, Infinity Stones, Loki. They're all built around those three. We need to feel something because we've got to be connected to this story on a grounded level. And the way you do that is to give us the perspective of a character or characters that your entire story is built around. And right now, that is what I think is missing. And you establish that with an Avengers movie.
But they established it before the Avengers movie.
So who would you say the main ones are?
No, I'm saying in the first phase, we knew who the main ones were before the they established it before.
Because they were the first movies to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But even after that, it still felt like they were the driving force.
Yeah. I think it's kind of what we talked about last time when we were saying, like, there's been, in the past phases, it's been obvious, like, there's certain movies that are like, this is an essential film for driving our story forward. And then there was other movies that were sort of like side missions.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, watch this, it's gonna be fun, it applies, but also it's not as essential, like the Ant-Mans and even like the Captain Marvel movie. Those types of things were like, these are like a little pits. Even like the Spider-Man movies were kind of like, this is just like a little pit stop, go have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come back later, but like that's not the driving force of where we're going. But right now they're driving in different directions.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit harder to determine. I mean, I would argue Wanda would have to be one, but then I don't know when she's coming back.
Yeah,
I would argue Doctor Strange would have to be a key one as well. I would think Sam Wilson would have to be one, but it's also been a long time since we've heard from him.
Well, he's got his movie coming. I think Shang-Chi.
I was going to say Shang-Chi too, but...
But he is. Remember in the after credit scene, he meets with Captain Marvel. He meets with Hulk.
I think what makes it feel confusing is that we're just going so long without hearing from them, knowing what's going on. Other projects are coming out where you would think that they might be aware of what's happening and they're not making an appearance. It's feeling like we're just going a long time without hearing from all of these key players. Like even Spider-Man, I would expect to be like important moving forward, but I have no clue when he's gonna make a reappearance.
After Iron Man's first movie, he was showing up in nearly every after credit scene.
Yeah. And and my understanding is that Sony and Disney are in a good place with that relationship.
It looks like it, yeah.
So I'm like, how come we're not hearing, like, there's not even like a thing like at the end of his movie, was there even like a Spider-Man will return in? There was? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a good sign. But it's like, where is he at? When is he coming back? Like, I'm assuming we'll hear from him in Daredevil because that'd be crazy if we didn't. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. But we didn't hear from him in Hawkeye. That's weird, right? Y'all are in his city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, just stuff is like, it's harder to feel like they're important.
Only one who's been around is Wong.
Yeah.
That's it.
One person who's going to show up is Wong.
The real MVP.
But yeah, it's hard to feel like these are like the lead or essential characters because you don't hear from them as often because they're doing so many projects.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts for Civil War? I mean, I think we covered pretty much everything. This is probably one of the... It's up there as... I mean, Russo's had 4 projects. I'd say they went 4 for 4.
What are the
Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame.
Oh, they didn't do Avengers 1.
No.
Oh, that was James Gunn.
No, it was not.
Who was it?
That was the weird guy that they fired because he was with Justice League.
That's not James Gunn.
No, stop saying James Gunn. James Gunn is a fine person. There's nothing wrong with him.
Oh, Weeder?
Josh Whedon.
Yeah. Okay.
That's who it was.
What movies? Oh, James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, sorry.
Which every time I watch that trailer, I just know I'm going to cry.
I really hope it's good. Honestly,
Oh, he didn't miss.
listen.
Gun done
That's what I
this.
used to say about Taika Waititi. And then Taika Waititi did Thor: Love and Thunder. At this point in this
Oh, I
phase,
mean, I think
there
James
have
Gunn
been
has
so
more of a catalog.
there have been so I don't know.
Actually, now then Taika he won an
He's
Oscar.
done. He has Oscars under his belt. Taika Waititi is a very accomplished director.
Yeah,
So
that's
it was
true.
it was very shocking. So at this point in the phase, so many movies have just been disappointments that,
You're just
frankly,
like,
I'm
fingers crossed.
on edge.
I hope it's good. Isn't that crazy? A few years ago, you're just like, I know it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Damn. How the turn? Well, not really turntables, because now it's just like nothing's good. Because DC's not that good anymore. Shazam is flopping bad. Flopping bad.
I'm not surprised.
Next on our list is House of the Dragon.
Yes.
We're gonna revisit that.
Yes. Tune in.
Listen, man, I'm always excited for House of the Dragon.
I'm gonna make a lot of y'all upset. I'm gonna let you know that right now because Allison is my girl and I go hard.
You're Team Green, aren't you?
I'm not Team Green, but I do love my good sis.
It sounds like you're Team Green, but you don't want to say it out loud.
No,
You can
I
say it.
genuinely am not.
Blink twice if you're Team Green.
I genuinely am not. But I just really love Allison, and I think people are too hard on her.
You know what I was thinking about the other day before we go out? It has to do with the composer, Ramin Djawadi. I don't think Ramin Djawadi gets enough credit for helping Game of Thrones, House of Dragon to get as big as it did. And I think about a lot of those iconic scenes that you remember. A
You
lot of
remember
it
the
is
music.
the music that kicks in. It's so impactful, and he does such a good job at swelling up the moment, and then you're just blown away when the release of whatever note comes next, and you're just like, wow, like this is such an emotional experience. And his music is not just emotional; it is informative. It's educational. I remember in those first two seasons, he would assign certain sounds, certain tracks to certain houses, and they would come in different alterations. Like they would come in different versions. Like he would modify it a bit to make it major or minor to attach with the scene. But whenever a song whenever a song kicked in, I knew which perspective we were going back to, or I knew which house we were visiting. And so it made it easier for me to remember all of the different stories that were happening.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? Like it's stuff like that where I'm like, people think that music isn't that important when it comes to television and movies,
it's
or
central.
or they don't. It gets a little underrated. It's not talked about as much. But without music in some of these scenes, think about in season 6 finale with Cersei.
Oh yeah.
When she blows up the sept.
Yeah, that I
Come on now.
The music was the driving force for that entire
When-
because it was like a long time with no words or dialogue at all.
Yes.
It was just the music.
Yes.
Yeah, and your whole time you're like,
What's
is
going to happen?
going on?
Or when Sansa shows up to win the Battle of the Bastards, when that version of the Stark theme kicks in, it's just like, let's go. Come on.
I even think, I mean, it's like a real accomplishment that like, people are always like when people watch the show now for the first time and their friends are, because somehow there is a lot of people who have somehow managed to avoid spoilers.
That's incredible.
Or I actually think it's less that, but more that like the spoilers just don't make any sense to you when you don't watch the
piece it
show.
together.
So you don't know what's coming. So like there's all these, people who are watching the show now and people who have seen the show film their reactions to things.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's like all these videos of people watching the Red Wedding. You can't see what they're watching, but it's the Red Wedding because you hear the music.
And just like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, man. And they started to do that again with House of the Dragon. Rhaenyra has her sort of song. The Valarians have their own track, and the Hightowers have theirs. It's the song that Alicent walks down to, because that one also plays when Aegon is getting crowned, and it plays when Sir Otto Hightower leaves King's Landing after he was fired, and he's trying to convince her that this is going to happen. Rhaenyra might come for your kids, essentially. So again, the music associated with the houses was such an intelligent decision to make, because not only are you being informed, you're reminded of it, right? And so when a scene shows up with that particular song, it's like nostalgia kind of kicks in. That first episode of the House of the Dragon, when they're playing that Targaryen theme, I was like, yeah, we're back. Westeros, baby. We're here, you know? So, anyways, that's our thoughts on Civil War. We'd love to hear what you all think. Are you all Team Cap or are you Team Iron Man? But with that, we will see you all next time, everyone. Take care. Peace. See ya.